Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures, and today we're going to discuss why I believe the best advice for securing small business is to have them outsource the monitoring of their security infrastructure. All right, so why do I say that? I say that because a lot of times you hear people recommend, small business, they should just use two-factor authentication or they just need good passwords. It's hard to have security posture advice that's consistent across restaurants to small businesses that make parts for nuclear reactors to, small source code shops who might be, major software supply chain vendors for the country. Different levels of risk, different levels of exposure, and so on. But I want to talk a little bit today about some reports that have come out from various companies that have done work in the SMB. So first one I want to talk about is Huntress. Now, Huntress is a managed detection and response. They have a company. They have their own EDR agent. They monitor Microsoft Office. They do cyber awareness training. Gula Tech Adventures is an investor, but they recently came out with a report that said, look, for everything that they found across their customer base, 56% of all incidents were malware free, and 65% of all of their incidents they found used a valid RMM tool. So basically, unless you're in a small business and you're fine-tooth going through your Sysmon, your logs, your NetFlow, whatever it is, you're not going to find these types of attacks unless you have somebody who's dedicated to do it. And chances are, if you're in the business of cooking burgers or making software for the DoD, you're probably not in the business of having a security stack that can find these sort of things. And it makes a lot of business sense to outsource this to somebody who can economically look for these things and protect you. In all of these cases, traditional advice of patching and two-factor authentication and that sort of thing, it may have worked, it may have not worked, but these are very interesting attacks. Unless somebody like a Huntress is looking for the business's normal patterns, you're not going to see these things. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is a report from our company, Threader. They have their 2023 security stack report. Now, the Threader SMB user base skewed a little bit more sophisticated than I think the average Huntress customer. 78% of their customers had a firewall. About 40% had intrusion detection. A quarter had SIM. So this is a little bit more sophisticated than an average, stereotypical dentist office, small business, that sort of thing. But there were two really, really interesting data points in this Threader report. The first one, on a scale of 1 to 5, every organization was asked, are you guys good? Are you in good shape to withstand an attack? 34% said they were a 5, and 40% said they were a 4. So you're talking 70% felt that they were at the tip of the spear when it came to defending their network from intrusions. However, the next question that was asked later on in the report was, if you could start over with no budget, would you? And half of those people said yes. Heck yes, we'd like to start over. Now, it's be kind of curious, what direction would they go? Would they go to a uniform stack like a Microsoft stack? Would they go to like a Google stack with, Google Chromebooks? Would they, adopt more authentication? There's a lot of different strategies if you start over. But I actually find that more indicative that people who said they were confident to defend the network, that they might not be as confident. They might want to upgrade that technology. Now, the third report that I want to kind of call out is from the Cyber Readiness Institute. Now, you might remember the Cyber Readiness Institute as an organization, nonprofit, focused on protecting small business. And I'm a fan of what they say. They very simply say, look, security is a combination of good passwords, including two-factor, password managers, that sort of thing, software updates, knowing your inventory and patching everything, doing phishing education. They don't actually come out and say, get a phishing service or that sort of thing, but they do recommend that people be aware of phishing. And finally, the fourth thing they recommend is secure storage and sharing, right? Don't use random USBs. Don't be willy-nilly about cloud data sharing and that sort of thing. So they did a report survey to, again, go into the small business, and they basically asked one question: how well are you using two-factor authentication? And in their customer base, and their people sampled, only half of the people out there were using two-factor authentication. Now, you could say this is a glass half full thing, and we've done a good job educating the SMB of the benefits. But if you look at the reasons why people are not implementing two-factor authentications, we're kind of all over the place. One of the reasons that people didn't deploy two-factor authentication was complexity. Other times it was cost. Other times it was they weren't too sure which one to choose. There's a lot of reasons, and it really comes down to awareness of the benefits of multi-factor authentication and two-factor authentication. Now, I tend to believe that these three reports all support my thesis that we should be telling small business that cybersecurity is important, and you should be using a third party to monitor your networks, your cloud systems, your assets and systems, because you probably don't have the resources to do it internally. We've done a very bad job of saying, what does a good view of security look like as an industry? But at least telling people they should get a third party, it does give them the ability to then have a relationship with that third party, and that the more they work with them, the more they can actually recommend courses of improvement. Now, maybe some of these third parties are Center for Internet Security Framework fans. Maybe some of them are NIST Cybersecurity Framework fans. Maybe we're moving people towards CMMC. The point is, maybe it's just, hey, look, patch management stinks, and we need to update the patch management. The person who wants to recommend something like that needs to be the person in the ring with the customer, defending them every day. It's hard as an industry, as complex as we are, to pick one thing like, wow, if we could just get two-factor authentication everywhere, we'd be good to go. Because things change so fast. I mean, look at how fast we've moved away from using SMS push notifications to as a second form of authentication, because of how easily we've seen that can be hacked by people who can spoof pins, take control of cell phones, and exploit BYOD phone devices like that. So within the Gula Tech Adventures portfolio, we've got a number of products and investments that we've done in this space. I've talked before about BMO. If you want to be 100% Microsoft and choose all the Microsoft projects that do security for you, everything from email to authentication to patching, BMO does a great job of managing these things for you and all in one stack. I've already kind of mentioned Huntress, their ability to do EDR and their ability to do Office 365. Threader is a great program for MSPs, MDRs, NDRs, MSSPs, that sort of thing, that can detect C2 communications and literally prevent that filtering. They're literally filtering hundreds of millions of bad guy IP addresses for small businesses. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about Trinity Cyber and Inky. Trinity, I've mentioned before on this YouTube channel several times. They are like an intrusion prevention system from the future. They've got a wide variety of small business programs where if you have a firewall that's perhaps outdated, they can do break and inspect, have all that traffic inspected, and they're basically doing virtual patching for all of the vulnerabilities recommended by CISA that need to be patched, both client side and server side. And then Inky, of course, is our small business email phishing and business email compromise solution that we've invested in. They have a great way of not only preventing phishing emails and business email compromise from coming into your organization, they also enable a wide variety of secure sharing of documents. Of course, if you want to learn more about these things, go to gula.tech, and we can definitely talk about this on LinkedIn and do more things there. But for the most part, the big takeaway I want you to take from today is that when you're talking to small business, you have to realize that unless you know that business's business and their tech stack cold, it's really hard to recommend one thing. You need to recommend that they're talking to an expert, they're talking to a service who's going to protect that business and make recommendations and coach them as they going forward. I'm Ron Gula. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you like this, and connect with us on LinkedIn if you want to hear more. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.